Hey, good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing? Good, good. Well, I'm glad to see such a great turnout today. If you haven't grabbed any food, please grab some now. There's food in the back. So today is a very auspicious day in the life of the Spirit of the Law. We are so grateful to welcome Dean Robert Rasmussen, the Dean of your law school. How many 1Ls are here today? Wonderful. Well, this series, The Spirit of Law, we're in our 4th year, and we really started this series in partnership with the Law School, the Levin Institute, and the Office of Religious Life to explore a few questions. How do you find meaning and purpose in your life in the law? How do you use your degree in creative and innovative ways? And how do you connect the personal and the professional in your life? And I noticed when I was in law school, these were conversations that students were having, that I was having with my peers outside of the classroom, and we thought it'd be nice to have a forum where we could talk about it in a sort of inside the classroom setting. And so I'm really grateful that we've had a great life, 4 years, and we're going strong. If anyone's interested in joining the student committee for the Spirit of the Law, please talk to Jennifer. She's our president this year. This is really for the students, by the students. Oftentimes the students will pick the speakers. We alternate between academics and practitioners. So please talk to Jennifer, and please come to our events in the future. We do about 3 a semester. We serve a free lunch, and recent ones have been online at the YouTube site for the law school, so you can see some of our recent programs. Today I'm really grateful to introduce the Dean of the Law School. Ever since we started this series, we've wanted to invite him. He's extraordinarily busy, and we're really grateful that he took time to be with us today. Dean Rasmussen was an undergraduate at the Loyola University of Chicago. He did his law degree at the University of Chicago Law School. Before he was dean at USC, he taught at Vanderbilt University, the University of Chicago, and the University of Michigan. He still teaches courses here in contracts for 1L students, and he's also interested in commercial lending and other aspects of business law. Today USC was ranked by U.S. News & World Report as a top-tier law school. It's a top 20 law school. It's not easy being the dean of a top 20 law school, and I'm sure he'll talk to you about that, but I want to congratulate him because under his leadership, USC has continued to advance in the rankings, expanded its international programs, expanded its programs in entertainment law, initiated a debt loan program for students doing social justice work. So we're really grateful to have him here. Please join me in welcoming to Spirit of Law, Dean Robert Rasmussen.
It's great to be here. So how did I get here? How did I end up that, my life's calling is being dean of this law school. It really is a calling. I feel privileged every day to be at this school, and I quite frankly, I can never imagine being anyplace else. So taking a cue from Dean Sonia, I thought I'd talk a little about how did I get to law school, how was law school like, and how did I end up here. So, when you think about coming to law school, it's interesting, right? You don't come fully formed to law school, but at the same time, you're not a blank slate. We're all products of our experiences in our life. And when I look back, I think, my experiences before law school, in large part, shaped who I am and my passion for this place. Just the sort of relevant highlights. So my father was killed in the service when I was 13 months old. I was raised by a single mother who had a degree in nursing. She was actually the head nurse at Baldwin Hills Hospital in town here. I had attended Highland Elementary in Inglewood, because we lived in Inglewood. I'm so old, I remember when they built the place. It's kind of cool watching it built up. And, we used to say we were a little lower middle class because that was aspirational. We were kind of struggling. And I remember I was 9 years old, and my mom said, well, the only way for us to move forward as a family, the 2 of us, was to suck it up and get some more education. So my mom got into the master's program at UCLA. And I'll never forget what happened a couple of weeks later. She got a letter, and she was really happy. She said, I said, what do you have? She said, well, I got a scholarship to go to UCLA. And I said, well, I don't understand. You got in 2 weeks ago. What's the big thing? She said, stop. You don't understand. It's about the scholarship. there's no way we can afford this. And that event, I think, really left two imprints on me. The first, is the college. My mom getting that degree really transformed our lives. I wouldn't be here but for the fact that she got that degree and that she got the scholarship that enabled her to get the degree. So when I go out and talk to our donors, it's very easy for me to ask about for donations for scholarships because I've seen how it transformed people's lives. It transformed my life through my mother. So it's something I'm very passionate about. The other thing that left a little mark on is, I was growing up in this town, and you got to pick early. And I was a Trojan. So ever since I was a little kid, I loved USC. So much so that one day in 1969, after my mother had just enrolled in UCLA, she came home and said, I have tickets for us to sit in the student section for the USC-UCLA football game. And I sat in the UCLA student section as an obnoxious, loudmouth 9-year-old cheering for USC. You guys are, if you don't know, when you talk to old USC people say 1969, oh my God, that was the game. That was the clear pass interference on 4th and 10. With 2 minutes to go. UCLA fans will swear it was 10 yards over the receiver's head, but it was clear pass interference. And SC won when it was at the Coliseum, there was a catch in the end zone, about a minute to go, and people still debate whether or not the receiver was in bounds. And I was so happy and obnoxious, I got a new appreciation for the law that day because there were laws that can strangle obnoxious. That's why I'm here. But after my mom, and also, it's one thing serious, we're a better law school than UCLA. I have no trouble saying that. But you'll never, ever hear me say a bad word about UCLA. It changed my life. It's a school I respect tremendously. My passion and love for USC, and it's meant in no way to diminish the great sister school we have across town. But after my mom got her master's from UCLA, moved to Chicago, both my parents, I grew up in Chicago. So that's why Chicago's littered over my resume. Went to Loyola, Chicago for college, and then moved to Chicago for law school. And I don't know about your background, but I had no idea what was going on. You heard my background. We had no professionals in my family. I had no idea what a lawyer does. It just sounded like kind of a neat thing to do. So I went there with no expectations, and it has really given me a very meaningful career. I love law school, to the extent that anyone can love law school, right? If you ask yourself the sense, people say, okay, I like law school, and you say, okay, would you like to go back and relive those 3 years? It's not on your life. No. But I really enjoyed law school. After my first year in law school, I didn't get a job with a firm. Some firms did offer jobs, but not everyone got one. I was one of those people who didn't. And there was a note posted on the bulletin board. It said 2 professors were looking to hire someone as a research assistant. I said, well, they pay money, sounds good. Money's always good, I'll do it. And I applied, I got it, and it turned out that was the next thing that led me to where I am for a couple of reasons. The first is being a research assistant during the summer after my first year, I learned that being a law professor might be a fun job. During law school, you never would have thought that because, at least for me, the first year of law school was nerve-wracking, stressful, confusing. You think, why would anyone voluntarily put themselves in this position? But during the summer, and talking to the faculty, talking about their scholars, I thought, well, hey, this might be a very interesting career to pursue. And the second reason it really led me here is that the 2 people I worked for really became mentors for me. One was Jeff Stone, who taught constitutional law. Jeff eventually became dean of the law school. He actually came here last year to do our inaugural Lehman Survey lecture. And Jeff has always been a very kind and generous advocate of mine. And the other professor I worked with is a man named Douglas Baird, who also became dean of the law school. At some point, I thought, how does Chicago pick deans if they don't know who worked for me? But he only became the law school. He is my co-author. We've written about 10 articles together. And other than a person on his faculty, he's my best friend in the legal profession. For those of you who don't know, my wife is on the faculty. She knows enough, but I met Douglas there. And Douglas was a bankruptcy law professor. And when I went to law school, I had no idea about bankruptcy law. Right? What is that? Who knows? I mean, how many people say, yeah, I want to do corporate organization since the age of 3? But working for Douglas, I learned how fascinating corporate organization law can be. Because it really is about how society determines which companies survive and which ones are put out of business. That every company that files for bankruptcy has a problem. Right? They can't pay their debts as become due. They still may have a chance of being reorganized. They still can be successful business. How do we decide which ones we do and which ones we get rid of? That's what bankruptcy is about, and that's a fascinating process. And so I got very interested in bankruptcy, studied a lot of bankruptcy throughout my career in law school. After law school, I clerked for a judge in Montgomery, Alabama. And then I worked for 3 years for the Department of Justice, just arguing appellate cases across the country, which is a lot of fun. You stand in the Second Circuit in 26 and say, my name is Bob Rasmussen, I represent the United States of America. It was just a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun. But I had really sort of gotten the bug about teaching by being that research assistant. So after doing the Department of Justice gig for a couple of years, I applied in Manhattan for law school. So I was very fortunate to get an offer to go to a number of schools and ended up going to Vanderbilt. And I was there for 18 years. And I was incredibly happy at Vanderbilt. It's a great school. I did a stint as associate dean, which is fun, but I saw what deans did. I don't like that. Actually, in Vanderbilt was doing a dean search. People said, "Do you want to be considered?" I said, "No, not anymore." A lot of dean search committees called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to meet?" I said, "No, I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing." And then one day, I got a call from Elizabeth Here, who's now the provost at the time. She was in the provost's office. I remember Provost Garrett when she was an entry-level aspiring law professor. So we go back pretty far. And she said, we'd like to consider you. And I said, you know what? First of all, you're a friend. And second of all, I have tremendous respect for USC. I said, no, they were the school. This is the one school I look at just because of its history in legal education. A lot of the great innovations in legal education in the 20th century really started in our law school. So I bet you, how many of you guys know that the first legal clinic in America in a law school was in USC? 1929, started by John Broadway. His idea was all third years should be a clinic, which is real law for a little bit. It's a 6-week program. It was wildly successful. It was so successful that we actually had to move it off campus because there was such a need for it, and it actually turned into the Los Angeles Legal Foundation. So LAFLA started here. Then during the second wave of clinical legal education, we started the Western Center for Justice in the basement of the school. So we have been pioneers in clinical education for decades. The other big movement in law schools in the 20th century is becoming more interdisciplinary, taking the insights from other parts of the university and using them to help better understand law. What's the economic rationale for law? How did history affect the development of law? What is going to be the psychological effect of law? There are pretty much, I think, 4 law schools that can be considered in the vanguard of this movement. It started in the mid to late 60s. Yale, Chicago, Virginia, and us. It was because of that history when then time Professor Garrett called me up and said, would you consider throwing your hat in the ring? And I remember saying, oh, I'll consider it out of respect for USC. It's such a great place. But you got to understand, the most likely outcome is I come out, you meet with the committee, you make nice, I go home, I'll talk to my wife, I'll call and say, we're happy in Nashville. Well, I came out here and told them. I remember flying into LAX, looking down, going, oh my God, how do you live there? But then I remember coming to this campus, meeting the faculty, and realizing the ambitions that we have as a university. And I went from a very reluctant candidate for this job to someone who just sat in his office wondering if the phone was going to ring. I was fortunate enough that they offered me the job. I think that the true reason they offered me the job is they really wanted Professor Brown to teach here. So because it was obviously a package deal. I came here in the fall of 2007, and it has been just an incredible opportunity of a lifetime. I really think that we give an education to our students that is second to none. And I really think we have the opportunity to do even better. We've always been a pioneer at the university. And I think we are being a pioneer once again. And we're building bridges across campus. And a lot of you know, so I encourage you guys to go out and take classes in other parts of the university. And it's what we call interprofessional education. Go learn about business with business students. If you're interested in the entertainment industry, go spend some time in the School of Cinematic Arts. If you want to do intellectual property, let's put you together with some engineers who create intellectual property. If you're interested in public policy, spend some time with students in the Price School. We are so fortunate at USC. We have, I think, the strongest constellation of professional schools in the country. And my aspiration for each of you is to take advantage of it. In what area? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. But figure out what kind of law you might be interested in, what area you're going to practice in. And I guarantee in that area, we will work with other professionals. Go meet them while you're here. Learn what they do. At the end of the day, we are a service industry. Okay? We service the needs of our clients, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or whether it's a homeless person who doesn't have a place to sleep down in Skid Row. We work for people. And we have to understand, working for people, how do we work with others? How do we work with other professionals? And I think here at USC, we really have an opportunity to learn how to work with the other professionals in a way that simply other law schools can't match. So I think I'm getting near the end of my allotted time. For those of you who suffer with me in contrast, you know I don't talk all that much. I'd much rather have your questions. So why don't I stop there and see what questions you have.
What advice might you have for people who are trying to get into the academic side of the law and actually teach contracts class?
That's a good question. Two pieces of advice. The first advice is do well in law school. It turns out that the first thing that people ask about is, were you a good law student? In part because if you weren't a good law student, I'm sure you can be good at teaching law. The second piece of advice, and this has really changed over the years, is you need to have something of a strategy in the following sense. When I decided to teach, I was like, hey, you go to law school, you do okay, you flirt, you work a little bit, you fill out a resume, you throw it in, and maybe you can pass it. Here, or today, we look for faculty who bring something else to the table. And it's usually one of two things. It's often an advanced degree in a cognitive discipline. So, for example, we're trying to recruit a woman right now who has a PhD in economics, who's just, super smart, will be a fabulous teacher, but she also can bring that economics training to the table. Or you have some work experience. at a very high level that will give you insight into what you're going to teach and what you're going to write about. So another woman that we are actively recruiting was associate at a major firm in Boston for 6 years, and one of her clients was Bain Capital. That they do private equity at the highest level, and she can use those insights and bring those to them. So in addition to the law training, how are you going to have something else allow you to say something interesting in both your classroom with your students and in your writing? So always have to talk about it. Any other questions? Yeah, they're like, you talk contracts, it can't be that hard.
You mentioned, part of like how you grew up, and I was just wondering, how did you manage to do so well and go to such a great law school, growing up in a single parent family?
Yeah, my mom, she passed away 2010. She was an incredible woman. We may not have had a lot of money, but I never doubted her belief in me. And she always encouraged me. When I was applying to college, I wasn't all that sophisticated. I applied to only 3 schools. I applied to Notre Dame, Illinois, and Loyola, because I thought I should stay close to my mom. I got into all 3. I said, what's the closest one to my mom? Loyola. Or maybe she said, what's the closest one to my mom? Something like that. But it was just, I went there, but I never doubted her support. I did well at Loyola, and I was just very fortunate to do well on the LSAT. So it was just, it was that. It's funny, you never really have a good perspective on yourself, especially when you're young. And I later heard people at Chicago saying about me, well, this is a weird kid. In the sense that he seemed bright enough, but man, is he unpolished. Didn't go to a fancy schmancy school, didn't go to a private high school, didn't have a professional in the family. They said, where did he fall off the truck? It worked well. It's basically, the encouragement of mother, the encouragement of Jeff Stone, and especially Douglas Barrett, just really led me to where I am. I'm old enough now to look back and say, I wouldn't be standing here but for the work of a lot of other people. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. The amazing thing is, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. Like, I just saw that little piece of paper, apply for a research assistant. Sure, why not? So my advice to students is you don't have to have it all figured out, right? I didn't have a plan, but when the opportunity comes, you have to take it. We see someone, be a researcher, do it. When a friend calls you up and says, hey, we think we'd like to talk about possibly being dean at the law school, why not? You may find it's the best opportunity of your life.
Do you recommend being dean of the law school?
I love it. And you know what? If I didn't love it, I wouldn't deserve to do it. But if you don't believe in the place you're dean, you should walk in and give the president your resignation that day. There's only, I used to say, I never had a bad day being dean, but I can't say that anymore because I had one really bad day. That's when Professor Whitebird, he was just an incredible professor. He was, I would say, the best classroom teacher in America. He called me up and told me he had stage 4 cancer. That was my day. But other than that, I love every day at this place. I love walking contracts and seeing students. I love having the opportunity to talk with the admitted students. I'm actually going to talk to some admitted students tonight. I'm going on the road next week to talk with admitted students and alums. It's all just been a joy. It's been a joy for a few reasons. First and foremost, I truly believe in the quality of the law school and USC. And I truly love Los Angeles. Los Angeles is one of the world's greatest cities. It really is not only great weather, which I'll know about, but it's exciting, it's diverse, it's ever-changing, And I really think it in a lot of ways embodies the future of the world. That, I think it's common knowledge the world is getting smaller and smaller, and everyone is going to have to learn to get along with people different than they are. And that's what we do on a daily basis in Los Angeles. So, like I said, if anyone wants to be dean of USC, first of all, I say over my dead body. But when I'm done, I would say it's just a great job.
So one of the reasons that I chose USC is because I went to a reception that you were at, and you were able to really clearly and genuinely and comfortably articulate why USC is so special.
Right.
With all the different pressures on law school deans today, financial pressures, the evolving, like the changing market, the economy, how do you continue to stay true to your values about what leadership a law school like this requires, and also sort of meet those changing needs for students and people like that?
Great question. In terms of the focus of it, one of the reasons I love teaching contracts, it reminds me every day why we're here. It's the education of you guys. And when I see you, talk to you, you hear about your ambitions, what you want out of your career, that helps me stay focused on that. Because I view my job is how in 3 years can I give you an education that's going to provide a platform for a career that's going to last for 50. Right? And it is learning how to think, learning how to rigorously analyze legal issues, and now I think learning how to work with cognate professionals. Because I don't know how long you're going to practice. I don't know what you're going to practice when you leave here, let alone when you practice in 30 years. But I want to give you the skills to be successful in whatever you do. In terms of what's the content of the education, what is helpful to students today, a lot of that comes from interacting with our alumni. That we are incredibly fortunate to be part of the Trojan Network, not only for a lot of the mentoring support they give our students, but also the time they give to me. And I will talk to alums and say, look, okay, you've been very successful in your career. Can you share with me what you think you would like to see in your first year associates? What would help them succeed in the law firm? And I'll never forget, I was talking to an alum, and he made the following observation. No one fails in a law firm for not knowing the law. No one fails in a law firm because they don't know the law. By the time you graduate from USC or another top school, you're really good at figuring out the laws. Right? I said, well, okay, that's helpful to know, but why do people fail? And he said, well, some people, it's not for them. Big law firm life is stressful. Fair enough. But the most common reason people tend not to succeed in law firms is they can't figure out what they're doing there. And what I mean by that is they cannot put themselves in a situation, what does my client need from me today? That your job, even as a young associate, is to figure out the needs of your client and find a way to deliver that value to your client. Again, I don't care who your client is. And part of the reason I keep harping on how important it is for you to make connections with other professional students on campus is that these people often represent the kind of clients you're going to see. So, Marshall School of Business, they're going to be some business leaders in this community. People in the arts program are going to be, stars in the arts and the entertainment industry here. People at the Turby, are doing just phenomenal research. That's awesome. That's taken off over in Silicon Beach. So I want to help you get that. So that it doesn't come from me sitting at night, how can we be different? It comes from me talking with alums saying, what skill sets do you need to survive and thrive in practice?
You have a unique view on on law schools and the life that graduates will lead when they leave. There's been a lot of data out there about declining enrollment in law schools, that perhaps the legal market's oversaturated, that the satisfaction rates may not be as high as other professions. What do you think about that data, and what do you think are sort of the challenges and opportunities in this new sort of legal world?
Yeah, boy. Do we have another 2
Yeah,
hours?
sorry, I know it's big. You can...
So first about the declining applications and what it means for law schools. On that, we are so fortunate that we're at USC that even though our applications are down, that means we get about 4,500 applications for 190 spots. So it's not a question of are we going to have a class. It's just we're going to have a class. It's going to be a great class. I think one thing that has changed because of the economy is when my friends ask, hey, my son or daughter is considering law school. Should they do it? My first question is, depends. Where are they going to go? If they could come to USC, yeah, it's worth it. That when I look at the outcomes for our students, they are having successful, meaningful careers. If you look at the data, that's not true at law schools across the country. But I think there was a belief in the middle part of the past decade that go to law school, it doesn't matter. Just go to any law school you can. It's going to be a ticket to success. It probably wasn't true then. That was probably a bit of an overstatement. But it's certainly not true now. That I have no trouble asking people to come here. Give me a substantial sum of money. And give me something even more important. You have 3 years of your lives. You guys are so talented. 3 years of your lives is much more valuable than the tuition cost is. And I want you to invest that here because I think you're going to get an education that's going to form a platform for a meaningful career. Is the career changing? You bet. But at some level, one of the great things about being a lawyer is things change. One thing I've always loved about being in the law is you have the opportunity to do new things every day and solve new problems. It's scary out there. Some of you have heard this line I used before, that to be a successful lawyer, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, that you're going to be put in situations that you've never seen before, that there's no clear answer, and you're supposed to figure it out. But you know what? That's why they hired you. And once you get comfortable doing that, it's a very meaningful and rewarding life. That said, I do have one major concern in the profession, and that really has to do with the role of women. That when I went to law school, I graduated in 1985. Yes, I'm that old. We were all optimistic because in my law school class, women were roughly equal to men, and women do just as well as men in law school, and women had just the exact same opportunities in law school, so they're entering the firms in the exact same numbers as their male counterparts. And sure, we looked at the senior leadership of firms. We thought, by the time we were old, right, women would be equally represented in the leadership across the legal profession. And that's just not the case. And I've talked to some of my female alums, both those who are successful and are leaders in the firms, and those who decided to forego that, about why it is. Why is it still the case that when you look at a law firm, at the associate level, you're going to see a good diversity, but you lose that diversity as you go up to the senior ranks. And part of it is, I think the way law firms are structured, they really demand a lot of your time. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's biological or cultural, I don't want to go down the Larry Summers route. At the end of the day, men are more willing to trade off certain values in order to be successful in a law firm. Much more willing, excited to work 40 hours a day. Women often are when they start, but at some point, mom says, I just don't see the value proposition here. It doesn't work, and it's something that our profession still struggles with. And I try to talk with firm leaders about this because they recognize that it's a problem with the profession, but it really is an artifact of a profession that goes by the hour. Now, it may be the case that there's a lot of changes in the profession. Some people are talking about the possibility of moving to something that's not hourly billing, something like flat fee billing. And maybe as that evolves, we can find some more creative ways to keep women in the profession longer, so that we will look at law firms and it looks like the rest of society. It's still the case that if you look at the leaders of law firms, it is a heavily male-dominated group. Did I leave anything out of your question?
Yeah, that's great.
Time for one more question. I'll start calling on people. So what should I know as dean? You talking about what should the dean know about you guys? I work for you.
Yeah, I actually have a question about your job. So I know that you teach and you also are the dean. How do you, what are some of the duties that you have to balance with teaching that we don't know about or that?
Okay. Part of the job is going out and asking our alums to contribute to law school, to keep making us better. We are very fortunate at law school. We have a large endowment. It turns out that if we look at our budget, tuition only covers about 70-75% of that. The rest comes through endowment income and donations. So I spend a lot of time with that. I spend a lot of time talking with admitted students, especially in the spring. I spend time talking with our faculty about, who should we hire? It is such a privilege to teach you guys here at USC. We take tremendous amount of time and effort to make sure that only the best people can come. These are the people who see the most promising. So I spend time working on that. I work with the provost's office on strategic initiatives and what can we do better to keep advancing law school. It doesn't sound like much, but it manages to fill all waking and sometimes non-waking hours. And so I'm supposed to complain about this part of my job, but you guys know me well enough now to know it's not a complaint. I actually like it. One thing that the Dean of UC does is goes to all home football games. So I think I'm the only dean of the top 20 law school who goes to all home football games. And I also go to UCLA and Notre Dame. So that's good. Because you see a lot of laws there. So it's part of the that connection. But my boss said we had to stop at 10 after 1. So thanks for coming out, guys.
Please join me in thanking.